From my observation perch in the shadowed alcove above the holding chamber, I recorded what we had presumed to be a straightforward capture. A human, small, unarmored, ordinary in every physical measurement, had been taken without resistance. His limbs were gracile, his movements lacking the fluid musculature that our soldiers prized. His eyes, wide and unnervingly aware, darted not with fear, but with a calculating intelligence that unsettled me. I had witnessed the submission of countless species across 1,000 worlds, but this human did not register as ordinary. We expected compliance, we expected pleas, we expected terror. None came. He did not shrink beneath the harsh light of the containment chamber. Instead, he examined us. The gaze was disquieting, a predator's study of prey before the strike. His head tilted subtly, almost imperceptibly, following each officer's movement, noting every micro-adjustment of our weapons, the subtle cues in our stances. There was no panic in those eyes, only observation, analysis, anticipation. As we secured him with energy restraints, he whispered something, a single syllable that resonated strangely in the sterile air. We could not comprehend it. The sound had no analog in our language banks. Yet even as his words escaped into the void between us, the very atmosphere seemed to bend around them. One of our officers, a veteran of 7 conquests, took a small step back, her limbs tense as if instinct alone recognized the threat we had failed to calculate. The human's companions, scattered across the perimeter, did not rush to his aid. They did not sprint. They did not draw weapons. They simply waited, still, silent, observing. Their patience radiated a confidence that seemed unnatural, alien, and deeply unnerving to all who beheld it. We conducted our scans. Our instruments recorded elevated heart rate, biological stress, but the patterns were irregular, unpredictable. His brainwaves pulsed with a rhythm unlike anything in our databases, each spike a puzzle piece that refused to fit our standard models of fear or aggression. Every time an officer approached, he adjusted, ever so slightly, ever so deliberately, his position, the angle of his gaze, the flex of his hands, subtle shifts, invisible to an untrained eye, yet every one a calculated move in a larger, unfolding strategy we could not yet discern. We believed we were in control. We, who had conquered and cataloged species that once dominated their worlds, thought ourselves masters of circumstance. Yet as I observed him, the first glimmer of doubt stirred in my mind, a creeping, invasive recognition that perhaps we were not the puppeteers. Each movement we made to assert dominance, each verbal command, each prod with containment energy was met with adjustment. He anticipated, circumvented, deflected, not with brute force, but with the measured precision of a mind unbound by conventional limitation. Then the first alarm blared.
Its wail cut through the corridor like the cry of an apex predator announcing its arrival. Our sensors had detected breaches elsewhere. Perimeter defenses were compromised, a drone swarm disabled in one sector, a turret misfiring at an empty corridor. Our response units mobilized, but even as we activated our automated reinforcements, I noticed it. The human had barely moved. A small smirk flickered across his lips. He had not opened the door, he had not triggered any device. Yet the chaos outside the containment chamber mirrored the subtle cues of his presence. The officers whispered among themselves. Orders given, rescinded, shouted, but the tension was palpable, and a tremor of unease passed through even the most seasoned among us. We were not facing fearlessness. This was something else, something systematic, calculation, strategy, improvisation that defied expectation. The human's body remained still, his expression calm, but the aura emanating from him, if it could be called such, was suffocating. Vulnerability, once a clear and predictable metric, had become a weapon. Each of our actions seemed preempted, every command anticipated. Even the containment field, a marvel of our technological might, felt as though it had been designed not to restrain him, but to showcase the futility of our assumption. A whisper traveled along the communication channels, the faintest report of another failure. A secondary security node had been overridden. Not by brute force, no, that would have been simple, but by subtle manipulations that indicated understanding, not just reaction. And then I realized, as the human's gaze met mine through the reinforced glass, that his comprehension of our operations extended beyond our simple expectations of sentient behavior. He was reading us, dissecting us in real time, using our own certainty against us. And yet, as the alarm shrieked, As our troops surged and faltered, and as our systems blinked under an invisible siege, the human did not flinch, not once. His companions, silent and patient, observed without movement, without expression, yet their presence amplified the sense of inevitable collapse around us. I could see it in their posture, in the subtle, deliberate spacing between them, every gesture a silent coordination that no algorithm could predict. In that moment, I understood the truth of our mistake. We had believed capture meant control. We had assumed fragility equaled weakness. But humans convert captivity into leverage, apparent vulnerability into the very instrument of their power. And as the first breach reports cascaded through our system, as energy pulses misfired and communications faltered, I felt a primal fear we had never recorded, a recognition of a force beyond measurement. We were not the hunters. We were spectators, observers of a species that thrived in adversity, that turned constraint into strategy, and that wielded unpredictability as its most formidable weapon. And then, just as the chamber lights flickered, the restraints hummed uncertainly, and the alarms blared with mounting intensity, he whispered again, this time a phrase. I did not understand the meaning, but I did understand the intent. It was not a plea. It was not a surrender. It was a declaration. And as the glass panel vibrated with the pulse of unseen machinery, I realized with a cold certainty we had underestimated the human entirely. We thought we held a captive. In reality, we had allowed a predator into our midst. The first containment lock clicked, not as it should, but in defiance of its design. The human tilted his head, eyes gleaming with a calm, terrifying certainty. And for the first time, I wondered if any species had ever challenged our dominance, and won without lifting a weapon. The alarms grew louder. The corridors outside began to tremble. Our soldiers shouted. The drones swarmed. And yet from the stillness of that single human figure, I sensed the storm was only beginning. The chamber doors, meant to constrain, now felt like the stage of an inevitable reckoning. And as I watched him, silent, patient, unstoppable, I realized what we had captured was not a human. It was an intelligence, a force, a strategy incarnate, and our era of unquestioned supremacy was about to be tested. The alarms tore through the ship like the screams of dying stars, a high-pitched wail that shattered the sterile calm we had carefully cultivated. From my observation deck, I watched the humans move, and I could not reconcile what I saw with the assumptions we had carried into this operation. Panic? Fear? Retreat? None of these. There was method, a rhythm in their chaos, a precision we were ill-prepared to comprehend. The corridors of the vessel, a carefully engineered labyrinth of steel and transparent alloy, became their canvas. Shadows stretched along the walls as they moved silently, exploiting blind spots, bypassing turrets, avoiding patrols with uncanny timing. One human, our hostage, the one we had dismissed as fragile, disengaged the containment locks with movements that were almost imperceptible. It was not brute force. It was subtle, elegant, and deliberate. The locks disengaged as if in response to his will alone, and for a moment I questioned whether the device had been flawed or whether his intellect had transcended the simplicity of our technology. The others followed, flowing like a silent river through the corridors, never colliding, never hesitating, their steps measured, purposeful. Every minor flaw in our security protocol was exploited immediately, systematically, and with devastating efficiency. I saw a human vault over a maintenance gap that, by every calculation, should have been unjumpable. He caught himself on a pipe, swung with the fluidity of a predator, and snatched a weapon from the wall, a standard-issue plasma rifle.
Even as the soldiers fired, the weapon was in his hands, a tool now turned against them, the air itself seeming to lend him momentum. Another disabled a communication node with a precision that defied logic. The system had been designed to be impervious, foolproof against any species lacking neural access codes. Yet the human dismantled it as if the interface were second nature. My sensors recorded the process, precise hand movements, milliseconds timed to perfection, actions that suggested an intimate understanding of the ship's inner workings, knowledge that should have been utterly beyond comprehension. From my observation perch, I felt the first tremor of unease creep through me. This was not fearlessness. This was something far more profound. Humans do not operate on the logic of fear.
They do not see walls as barriers, dangers as immovable obstacles. Each apparent setback, every alarm, every locked door, every automated defense was not a threat to them. It was an opportunity. Every obstacle became a tool. Every miscalculation on our part became an advantage they exploited instinctively. The response teams moved, attempting to corral them. Drones whirred, guns deployed, energy nets activated, and yet every countermeasure was anticipated, circumvented, neutralized. They flowed around threats as though the ship itself bent to their intent. One human vaulted across a collapsing walkway, snatching a plasma rifle from a fallen officer mid-leap. Another triggered a door to collapse on a pursuing drone, sending it tumbling into a maintenance shaft. Chaos erupted, and still they moved as one coherent entity, almost choreographed, guided by some intelligence we could not parse. I realized with a rising, chilling dread that our perception of control was an illusion. For decades, our conquests had been defined by superiority, numbers, weapons, technology. We expected species to respond predictably: fear, submission, surrender. But humans rewrite the rules. Their audacity is a strategy, their unpredictability a weapon. They turn desperation into method, vulnerability into strength, and fear into an engine of ingenuity. Where others crumble, humans thrive. Where others hesitate, humans act with surgical precision. Even as we scrambled to contain them, sending reinforcements down corridors that were now hostile territory, the humans continued to slip past every obstacle. Every turret, every drone, every door we bolted in haste became part of their theater. I could see the way they coordinated without words, flicks of the head, subtle shifts in posture, movements almost imperceptible to the eye, yet perfectly synchronized. It was as if the ship itself recognized them as masters, its corridors bending to their improvisation. The alarms grew louder, the corridors brighter with flashing warning lights, red painting every reflective surface. Officers shouted orders, their voices drowned in mechanical wails.
Yet I noticed the smallest details: a human ducking beneath a laser grid just as it fired, another using the energy of a fallen panel to vault over a barricade. Each act of survival was also a demonstration, a display of intelligence, adaptability, and unyielding resilience. I felt my own calculations falter, my certainty of victory dissolve. From my perch, I recorded every movement, trying to rationalize it, to catalog it, to prepare a strategy that could predict their next step. But the patterns eluded me. Every time we adapted, they had already adapted beyond our comprehension. Every time we tried to trap them, they anticipated the trap. Every advantage we believed we held was fleeting, slipping through our fingers as if it had been an illusion from the start. And then I saw it. The human who had been our hostage moved with a confidence that was impossible to ignore. He paused for a heartbeat at a junction, assessing, calculating, and then darted through a hatchway we had sealed moments ago. We assumed containment. He assumed opportunity. His companions flanked him silently, shadows weaving around the labyrinthine corridors. Even from this distance, the precision of their movements spoke volumes. Nothing was random, everything purposeful. It was at that moment I understood the terrible truth. Humans do not merely survive, they strategize. They do not merely fight, they improvise. They do not merely escape, they dominate the environment around them with an intelligence that our species cannot anticipate. The corridors of our own ship, once the symbol of our control, had become the stage for their audacious, mesmerizing brilliance. The alarms blared, the lights flickered, the automated defenses groaned under strain, and still they moved, unstoppable, methodical, inevitable. From my observation deck, I realized that what we had believed to be containment was merely a prologue. The breach was not just physical, it was conceptual. Humans had transcended our expectations, rewriting the rules of engagement in real time. And as the first turret fell, misfiring against its own operators, as the corridors filled with confusion and chaos, I felt the creeping terror that comes not from the strength of an enemy, but from the realization that our understanding of them was entirely insufficient. The humans were not escaping, they were redefining dominance. And in that moment, from my perch above the chaos, I understood the starkest truth I had ever known. The human species cannot be predicted, cannot be subdued, and cannot be controlled. The containment breach was complete, and somewhere deep in the labyrinth of our own ship, the human we had thought fragile was already several moves ahead, smiling at a game we did not even know we were playing. From the control nexus, high above the command floor,
I observed the humans with a growing unease that began as curiosity and quickly mutated into dread. They were no longer in sight, banished from every sensor, every camera, every patrol sweep, but their presence was palpable. The ship itself seemed to betray our expectations. Power conduits flickered, lights pulsed erratically, communications stuttered and fragmented. Systems that had always functioned flawlessly now hesitated, stumbled, and failed. We had thought our technology invincible. We had relied on our sensors, our turrets, our drones, our control networks to corral them. And yet the humans moved through this environment as if it were a single, cohesive organism, every step a deliberate stroke in a larger pattern we could neither see nor predict. They were not simply reacting, they were orchestrating. Every corridor we secured became a trap. Every junction we monitored became a snare. Even the alarms themselves, designed to alert and coordinate, were rendered tools in the humans' expanding theater of chaos. From the corner of my observation deck, I saw the one we had believed weakest, the captive we had underestimated, appear in a corridor that should have been sealed. He crouched behind a maintenance conduit, fingers deftly disengaging a security relay. The display projected a cascade of alerts, red text scrolling with warnings, yet he worked as if the systems themselves were extensions of his own mind. Every panel he touched, every wire rerouted, shifted the balance of power on this vessel. The other humans moved like shadows, slipping past barriers that should have been insurmountable. They scaled maintenance shafts, bypassed automated turrets, and disabled communication nodes with near-invisible efficiency. There was no hesitation, no panic, no wasted motion. Intelligence and instinct blended seamlessly. Improvisation married foresight. We had underestimated them at every turn, and with each step, that underestimation became more apparent, more damning. Our response teams surged forward. Drones whirred, weapons discharged, energy nets deployed. But each countermeasure was anticipated. Every trap we laid became a trap for us. A turret misfired and skewered a control panel, cutting communication to an entire sector. A squadron of drones found itself ensnared in a corridor rigged with improvised obstacles, weapons tangled, engines jammed. Every action we took to regain control was met with a precision that we could not predict. Fear began to ripple through our ranks, subtle at first, then swelling. Not the fear of physical domination. The humans were not stronger, nor faster, nor armored, but fear born of irrelevance. Our weapons, our strategies, our experience meant nothing against the ingenuity of creatures we had dismissed as fragile. Each time a human circumvented a blockade, disabled a turret, or vanished from our sensors only to appear somewhere else, it was a message carved into the heart of our command structure. You may have captured us, but you cannot control us. I saw officers, the most disciplined of our soldiers, falter.
Fingers hesitated over controls, eyes darted between readouts, minds scrambling to adapt to scenarios for which no protocol existed. And all the while, the humans continued, unbroken, flowing through our corridors with a calm, terrifying precision. One of them appeared in a sector we had deemed secure, crouched low behind a console, improvising a makeshift EMP pulse with materials no sane engineer would think functional. Another, unseen, bypassed the energy locks on a stairwell, leaving our soldiers trapped above as the floor beneath them locked down. The human we had believed fragile, a single unarmored figure, was now orchestrating chaos with the skill of a general commanding a battalion. From the observation deck, I watched them weave through our systems as if reading the ship itself. It was more than tactics, it was artistry. Each misstep we made, each minor flaw we left, was exploited, enhanced, and transformed into advantage. Our confidence, once steady and absolute, dissolved into a creeping, pervasive dread. And yet, they never stopped, they never hesitated. Even as alarms screamed, even as our forces scrambled, they moved as a single, inexhaustible entity. Coordination without communication, strategy without planning, improvisation without error. It was mesmerizing, it was terrifying, and it was impossible. A sudden flicker on the tactical display drew my attention. The humans had rerouted a power conduit, redirecting energy from a defensive array to a ventilation system. Seconds later, a squadron of drones plunged into the shaft, their sensors blinded, engines disabled. Another human appeared behind them, tossing an improvised device that sent sparks flying. The corridors, once instruments of our dominance, were now proving fatal to our forces. I realized with a cold clarity
the magnitude of our misjudgment. We had assumed humans were predictable, bound by fear, constrained by their mortality. We had assumed control over their movements, their reactions, their decisions. And yet here they were, elusive, adaptive, mercilessly intelligent. Our superiority, our training, our firepower, all of it had become irrelevant. From my observation deck, I watched as they disappeared into shadows we could not monitor, leaving only chaos in their wake. Doors sealed behind them, turrets jammed, drones destroyed or trapped, communication loops overloaded. Every move they made was a masterstroke in a campaign we did not even realize had begun. It was then that I understood a fundamental truth. Humans are not only survivors, they are forces of nature. They are not governed by fear, nor limited by expectation. They do not simply evade, they redefine the battlefield. Their ingenuity transcends brute force, strategy, and technology, and once awakened, that ingenuity leaves even the mightiest of conquerors in awe, powerless before the elegance of improvisation combined with relentless determination. The observation screens flickered.
Red warnings cascaded across consoles. Drones whirred uselessly. And still the humans moved, silent and unstoppable, reshaping the corridors into a gauntlet of their design. From the control nexus, I felt the first truly alien sensation in my long career, a profound, helpless admiration mixed with terror. The humans had vanished again, yet their presence was everywhere. Systems failed where they had passed, turrets jammed where they had lingered, communications twisted where their ingenuity had intervened. Every trace of their movement was a signature of a mind far beyond our prediction. And then, at the edge of my sensors, I glimpsed the one we had captured, crouched in a shadowed vent. His eyes met mine, calculating, aware, triumphant. It was a stare that conveyed not survival, but mastery. And in that gaze, I recognized the truth we could not deny. The humans were no longer merely escaping. They were dominating. From the shadows of our own ship, they were rewriting the rules of engagement. Every corridor was their arena, every system their instrument. Every trap we had laid had become a trap for us. And as the alarms blared, as the lights flickered, and as the communication networks faltered entirely, I knew it was only a matter of time before the humans' counterattack escalated further. They were everywhere and nowhere, calculating, anticipating, unstoppable. The control nexus, once the symbol of our command, was now a theater for their ingenuity. And in the deep red glow of failing monitors, I realized the inevitable. Humans do not merely resist. They redefine the meaning of resistance itself. The next move, whatever it was, would come from the shadows, and we would be powerless to stop it. From the observation deck, I watched the humans reveal the full measure of their strategy. What we had dismissed as improvisation, chaos, and instinct was in fact a deliberate gambit, a calculated orchestration designed to exploit every flaw in our assumptions. They moved through our defenses not as isolated individuals, but as a singular organism, striking not at our greatest strength, but at our most subtle weaknesses. Our arrogance had spread our forces thin. We relied on technology and numbers, and in doing so, we left the perfect openings for their ingenuity. I observed the one we had captured, the human we had assumed fragile, slip into our command center through a ventilation shaft no soldier had deemed navigable. Sensors had registered him only briefly, then lost him entirely. And yet, within minutes, he had turned our systems against us. Reinforcement commands misrouted, turret arrays misfired, doors sealed unexpectedly on our own personnel. He moved through the consoles with the confidence of a seasoned operator, his fingers flicking switches and rerouting energy flows. We, masters of countless civilizations, were suddenly actors in a drama authored entirely by him. The other humans coordinated as well, without words, without sound.
Subtle gestures, a tilt of a head, the adjustment of a hand, the pause of a footstep, dictated synchronized movements that dismantled our defenses piece by piece. One squadron of drones was rerouted into an empty maintenance bay, another trapped in a corridor where we had anticipated they would flee. Turrets locked on their own units, doors sealed indiscriminately, automated systems shut down under waves of improvisation. And all the while, the humans moved forward, calculating, observing, and exploiting with precision that defied reason. From my vantage, the scale of their audacity became clear. These creatures, whom we had assumed fragile, had turned vulnerability into leverage. Every error we had ever made,
every predictable response we assumed from captives, every protocol we relied upon to enforce compliance. They had studied it, anticipated it, and inverted it. Our own systems, our weapons, our very confidence were now instruments in their campaign. A squad of soldiers attempted to intercept one human moving through the side corridors, only to be caught in an automated lockdown triggered by another companion. In seconds, the patrol was immobilized, weapons frozen in their hands. Another human appeared moments later, tossing a device into a junction that disrupted power to a critical sensor array. We tried to respond, but each action we took was anticipated. Every reinforcement dispatched was rerouted or trapped. Each tactical command executed was met with counters, invisible until it was too late. Our superior firepower, our technological dominance, was irrelevant. These humans were not merely fighting, they were rewriting the rules of engagement. They did not attack with brute force, they attacked with strategy, foresight, and patience. They did not simply fight, they choreographed. Each misstep on our part was magnified, each predictable move exploited. It was artistry, and we, the proud conquerors of countless species, were mere spectators. Even the human we had assumed weakest became central to the operation, not by aggression, but by command. His companions deferred to him in ways that were imperceptible, a language of gesture and intent that no alien species could have anticipated. He coordinated the movements of units we could not even see, manipulating the battlefield through observation and improvisation. Turrets misfired in ways that suggested premeditation, doors sealed where they should have opened, drones collided with walls, misaligned, unable to respond to the speed and cunning of human maneuvering. And still, they advanced. Their movements were calm, controlled, unhurried, yet devastatingly effective. No human faltered, no one panicked, no one hesitated. Their intelligence intertwined with instinct, their patience with audacity, until what we had assumed was chaos revealed itself as a coherent, horrifyingly effective strategy. I felt a creeping sense of irrelevance wash over me. We had trained for unpredictability.
We had simulated resistance, contingency, improvisation. And yet these humans, with no armor, no overwhelming force, no technological advantage, had outmaneuvered us at every turn. Our own superiority, measured in decades of conquest and in the scale of our arsenal, meant nothing. They were redefining the battlefield in ways we could not comprehend, forcing us to react rather than act, to follow rather than lead. A squadron of reinforcements moved to intercept another human, only to find themselves caught in a hallway transformed into a gauntlet. Improvised obstacles, misaligned doors, and hidden tripwires slowed them to a crawl, while from shadowed vents the humans struck, disabled, and vanished. Every step forward for us became a potential trap, every attempt to regain control another miscalculation. And then the human we had assumed fragile did something extraordinary. He accessed the central command console, bypassing layers of security that we had deemed impenetrable. Within moments, he rerouted communications to misdirect reinforcements, created false sensor signatures, and injected confusion into the ship's AI. It was as if the vessel itself had become an extension of his mind, responding instantly to his intentions. The humans had taken our technology and turned it against us, not with brute force, but with cunning and foresight that rendered our own systems liabilities rather than advantages. From my observation deck, I realized the magnitude of our mistake. We had underestimated them entirely. The humans had turned captivity into a battlefield of wits, converting constraint into opportunity, apparent weakness into the most lethal of advantages. Each success, each maneuver was a message. You may have captured us, but you do not understand us. You cannot control us. You cannot predict us. Even as I tried to calculate their next moves, I understood the futility of prediction. They were improvising with foresight, anticipating the unpredictable, exploiting every potential error in our planning. And yet, their actions were not random. They were deliberate, intelligent, synchronized, a force that seemed simultaneously chaotic and precise. Our soldiers, trained for centuries in strategy and command, were helpless against the humans' audacious ingenuity. I saw officers falter. I saw experienced captains hesitate. Our confidence, once absolute, fractured under the weight of human cunning. The humans had not merely fought, they had orchestrated, manipulated, and controlled the battlefield in ways we could not comprehend. And still they advanced, calm and unbroken, the embodiment of ingenuity and willpower combined.
It was at that moment I understood the terrifying brilliance of the human species. They did not conquer through strength or technology. They conquered through intellect, adaptation, and the audacity to exploit what others consider weakness.
They transformed captivity into control, vulnerability into advantage, and chaos into strategy. And as I watched the one we had captured coordinate the movements of the others with imperceptible signals, I realized that we were no longer combatants. We were audience, helpless spectators to a species that had mastered the art of dominance in a form we could not even define. The corridors of the ship, once our symbol of order, had become a theater of human ingenuity. Doors sealed against our forces, turrets malfunctioned in critical moments, drones collided with walls or shut down entirely, and through it all, the humans moved forward, unhindered, unstoppable, ever calculating. The humans had not merely turned the tide, they had seized the initiative entirely. And from my vantage, I could see the pattern emerging, a choreography of brilliance within chaos, a methodology that defied our understanding of strategy. We had underestimated them entirely, and now, for the first time, we truly comprehended the depth of their capacity for resilience, intelligence, and foresight. The command center was in disarray, reinforcements misdirected, and every tactical advantage we had counted on was now irrelevant. And in the quiet, almost imperceptible glances exchanged between the humans, I saw the culmination of their gambit, the entire ship, once our domain, now bending to their will. The humans had turned our victory into a trap, our power into a liability, and our arrogance into a weapon they wielded against us. And as the observation monitors flickered, showing red alerts cascading across every sector, I realized with cold clarity, we were no longer the masters, the humans were. And somewhere in the shadows, the one we had thought weakest paused, surveying the chaos with calm, calculating eyes. The gambit had succeeded. The humans had shown us that control is an illusion, and strategy is defined not by power, but by foresight, improvisation, and unyielding will. The battle was far from over, but the humans had already won the first, most crucial act. Panic spread through our ranks like a viral fire, leaping from one officer to the next, igniting confusion and eroding the discipline we had long relied upon. From my vantage above the command floor, I saw it all, the steady disintegration of our order, the unraveling of systems designed to enforce control. Alarms blared incessantly, lights flickered in erratic patterns, and every communication channel was jammed, redirected, or misfiring. It was as if the ship itself had turned against us, yet it was not the vessel, it was the humans commanding it from within shadows we could not even perceive. They moved with uncanny precision, exploiting every weakness we had ever overlooked, anticipating every calculated response we attempted. From corridors we had deemed secure to junctions monitored by overlapping sensor grids, humans appeared and vanished as if they were the currents of a river, flowing freely through barriers we had built to contain them. One by one, our patrols faltered. Officers froze in disbelief, weapons misfiring or locked in safety modes we could not override in time. Our drones collided with walls, their navigation systems tricked by human improvisation, and turrets locked onto harmless targets while humans slipped past unharmed. From my observation deck, I watched the final phase of their strategy unfold. It was no longer mere escape, they were reclaiming. Every corridor, every maintenance shaft, every security checkpoint was transformed into a calculated instrument of human dominance. They did not charge, they did not rush, they moved deliberately, a symphony of motion and intent, each step reshaping the battlefield in real time. Where we expected resistance, we found ingenuity. Where we expected fear, we found audacity. Where we expected submission, we found orchestration. Our command infrastructure collapsed under coordinated sabotage, panels overloaded with diverted power, doors sealed or opened unpredictably, control nodes sent false readings, rerouted our reinforcements, and created phantom threats throughout the ship. We tried to adapt, to regain command, to reassert authority, but every action we took played directly into the humans' designs. Their improvisation was not random, it was deliberate, precise, and devastatingly effective.
One human appeared at a junction previously thought secure. He crouched behind a control console, fingers dancing across the interface. Within seconds, a cascade of alerts signaled the rerouting of energy flows, the misalignment of defensive turrets, and the immobilization of drone units. Another human emerged from the shadows, tossing a device that interfered with environmental controls, sending temperature and pressure sensors into chaotic fluctuations. Our forces floundered. Systems we considered infallible now failed with minimal effort on their part, as though every mechanism had been designed to betray us the moment humans applied their ingenuity. It became painfully clear. Dominance is meaningless against a species that does not fear consequence, that converts apparent vulnerability into strategic advantage. The humans demonstrated in real time an adaptability that no simulation, no doctrine, no superior weaponry could predict. Each movement was simultaneously tactical and artistic, a display of creativity, foresight, and audacious intellect. The corridors of steel and glass, once the embodiment of our control, had been transformed into a labyrinth navigable only by them, a theater in which we were the hunted. Even our most advanced drones, designed to operate autonomously and neutralize threats in microseconds, were outmaneuvered.
One squadron became trapped in a maintenance shaft, forced to collide with each other, their sensors feeding false data back to command. Turrets misfired, energy locks jammed, and our personnel stumbled through corridors now rigged with improvised hazards. The humans' awareness of their environment, combined with the speed of their improvisation, rendered our technology irrelevant. They were teaching us a lesson. Our superiority meant nothing when confronted with a species that redefined rules we had long assumed universal. From my observation perch, I could see the officers' faces pale, their movements hesitant. Panic, confusion, and disbelief rippled like a contagion through the ranks. They shouted orders that went unheeded, directed reinforcements into traps of their own design, or hesitated at critical moments, paralyzed by the unpredictability of human calculation. Our pride, the pride of conquerors who had dominated countless worlds, was crumbling before creatures we had assumed fragile. And then I witnessed it, the humans moving together, yet independently, a coordinated force not bound by conventional command. One dismantled a communications node with such precision it would have required intimate knowledge of our ship's architecture. Another bypassed energy locks, opening a corridor for reinforcements that never came, only to retreat and strike from a previously secured junction. Their coordination was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet devastating in effect. They were weaving the ship itself into a tool of their strategy, turning every weakness into an advantage, every opportunity into dominance. From my vantage point, I understood the depth of their brilliance. This was not mere survival instinct. This was strategic mastery. The humans had transformed vulnerability into control, weakness into leverage, and chaos into a weapon. We had believed capture equated to control, that containment meant superiority. And yet with a few coordinated moves, the humans had seized command of the battlefield entirely, reshaping our own ship into an instrument of our failure. The corridors became their stage, lights flickered, shadows stretched, and the humans moved silently, deliberately, executing improvisations with absolute precision. Each drone destroyed, each turret misfired, each locked door turned into a snare. It was all part of a pattern, a demonstration of intellect and foresight that rendered our strength irrelevant. They were not physically superior, they were mentally invincible. And I, observer and chronicler of the collapse, felt a rare and profound emotion, awe. The humans were unbound by conventions, unshackled by fear, unrestrained by expectation. Every move revealed a creativity and audacity that we had never witnessed, a brilliance that redefined the concept of strategy itself. They did not merely adapt, they dictated the terms of engagement, converting every action of ours into another opportunity to demonstrate their superiority.
From the control nexus, I watched as the final phase of the humans' reclamation reached fruition. Turrets jammed in mid-fire, reinforcements were misdirected into empty corridors, drones spun helplessly in maintenance shafts, officers scrambled, coordination fractured, command evaporated, and all the while the humans advanced, a singular force of intellect, resilience, and unyielding will. It was then that I truly comprehended the magnitude of their achievement. We, the conquerors, had become the hunted. Our weapons, our numbers, our experience, all were irrelevant. Dominance, as we understood it, held no meaning against a species that converted every perceived disadvantage into an instrument of power. In the chaos, I glimpsed the terrifying elegance of human resilience. The humans moved as shadows, yet left trails of inevitable victory. Each action was deliberate, each decision executed with precision, each improvisation anticipating our reaction before we had even considered it. They had transformed the very ship into a labyrinth only they could navigate, a battlefield in which the rules of engagement had been rewritten entirely in their favor. The humans had seized control, not through overwhelming force, but through creativity, foresight, and audacity.
and as I watched from the observation deck, powerless to intervene, I realized the starkest truth I had ever encountered. No weapon, no protocol, no army could contain a species capable of thinking in ways that transcended our understanding. The collapse of control was complete. The corridors of steel and glass, once a symbol of our mastery, had become a theater of human ingenuity. The humans, moving with precision, patience, and inexhaustible resolve, had redefined the battlefield, turning our own superiority into a liability. And as the ship trembled under the weight of our failures, one thought echoed through my consciousness. We had underestimated them, as all species inevitably do. The humans were no longer merely escaping, they were reclaiming, dominating, and demonstrating the terrifying brilliance of their kind. And somewhere, deep in the labyrinth of the ship, the one we had captured paused, surveying the chaos with calm, calculating eyes. The collapse of control was total, and the humans had shown us, in ways impossible to ignore, that resilience, ingenuity, and audacity are forces beyond measure. The bridge hummed with a tense, artificial calm, the residual lights reflecting off polished surfaces, consoles flickering with warnings we had long ignored. Our remaining forces had gathered for what we assumed would be a decisive confrontation, the final suppression of these human anomalies. Weapons were primed, turrets locked, drones poised, commanders barked orders, calculations were made, probabilities tallied, and yet an unease crawled through my sensors, my consciousness, and into every thought I possessed.
The humans had rewritten the rules of engagement, and now we were unsure if any protocol could contain them. From my observation point, I could see the corridors below, the labyrinthine steel and glass of the vessel, now a war theater controlled entirely by creatures we had once thought fragile. They moved as shadows, deliberate, unseen, yet their presence was felt everywhere. It was impossible to anticipate their exact movements. They struck unpredictably, simultaneously defensive and offensive, exploiting every hesitation, every miscalculation we made. Our formations faltered as if gravity itself had shifted, our numerical superiority meaningless against their audacious improvisation. The human who had been our host orchestrated this final phase. I watched him from the bridge, his eyes scanning, observing, calculating with a precision that belied any assumption we had made about physical fragility. His companions moved in near-perfect synchrony, yet without spoken commands, without detectable signals. Subtle tilts of the head, micro-adjustments of posture, slight changes in gait. They coordinated a complex choreography of survival and offense that seemed impossible to intercept. Our strongest officers attempted to respond. Tactical commands were issued, reinforcements mobilized, drone squads dispatched. Yet every move was anticipated, every deployment rerouted, every strike countered before it could be executed. One officer attempted to redirect a battalion to intercept a human moving along a side corridor, only to find the route blocked by an improvised barrier, a makeshift blockade created from maintenance conduits, energy grids, and misaligned panels, orchestrated in such a way that it funneled our forces into a vulnerable choke point. Another officer attempted to secure a section of the ship by activating the automated turret arrays. Within seconds, the turrets misfired, misaligned, and disabled our own reinforcements in a devastating display of cunning improvisation. And still, the humans advanced, not with brute force, but with intelligence expressed as movement, action, and strategy. Each strike, each maneuver, was a calculated strike against our assumptions. Every expectation we held about how a species reacts to captivity was shattered. Our calculations, once infallible, were rendered irrelevant, replaced by a pattern of ingenuity, patience, and audacity that we could neither predict nor counter. From the bridge, I observed the human move through the command nexus with near-invisible cues. A subtle nod, a flicker of the eyes, the adjustment of a footstep. These were commands, imperceptible to all but his companions. Within moments, our strongest officers were incapacitated. Reinforcements intended to stabilize sections of the ship were misdirected into corridors rigged with improvised hazards. Turrets, meant to dominate any corridor, locked onto phantom signatures. Drones, designed to calculate human behavior in microseconds, were rendered useless by a combination of ingenuity, misdirection, and manipulation of their sensors. The humans did not charge recklessly. They did not rely on numbers. They used patience as a weapon, foresight as a tool, and audacity as armor. They seemed simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, their presence a series of calculated interventions in a dance of survival and dominance. Every action they took altered the battlefield itself, reshaping corridors, repurposing systems, and turning our own technology against us. Even as alarms blared with renewed urgency, signaling cascading failures throughout the ship, they advanced methodically. One human disabled a power conduit to a sector we had assumed secure, plunging our troops into darkness, just as another disabled the security AI managing the automated defense systems. Our reinforcements faltered. Our soldiers froze, disoriented in the labyrinth they no longer understood. The humans had transformed the environment into their weapon, each corridor a gauntlet, each junction a trap, each control console a tool of subversion. I watched one of them appear in a previously sealed junction, crouched behind a console, fingers moving with precision over input panels designed to resist unauthorized manipulation. With a few deft motions, he rerouted surveillance feeds, sending phantom signals to confuse our response teams. Another human appeared seconds later, intercepting reinforcements in a corridor with improvised barricades and environmental manipulation, forcing our troops into positions of vulnerability. Each intervention was surgical, every decision deliberate, yet executed with the speed of instinct. It was not strength that overwhelmed us, it was intelligence. The humans had transformed vulnerability into opportunity, improvisation into dominance. Every assumption we had about power, control, and predictability had been invalidated. The corridors of steel and glass, once symbols of our supremacy, had become instruments in their hands, bending to their will with terrifying elegance. And then the final maneuver began. The human we had captured moved to the central console of the bridge itself, manipulating systems we believed secure, redirecting the flow of personnel, and repurposing our energy arrays. Turrets misfired spectacularly. Reinforcements were rerouted into traps we had once considered failsafe. Drone units became immobilized as environmental controls shifted, floors adjusting, lights flickering, sensors feeding false information into command systems. Every element of our superiority was neutralized, repurposed, or exploited. I realized with cold clarity that we were witnessing the culmination of a species' ingenuity, a species that had turned captivity into control, weakness into leverage, chaos into art.
Our forces, disciplined, trained, and technologically superior, were reduced to spectators in a performance of survival and dominance. The humans did not merely fight, they orchestrated, manipulated, and executed strategy with an intellect that made fear seem obsolete. From the bridge, I could see the officers' faces, pale, wide-eyed, their movements hesitant as humans executed maneuvers we had not even considered. One by one, positions once deemed secure were compromised. Systems we had trusted to enforce order failed spectacularly. And through it all, the humans advanced, calm, precise, unstoppable. It was in this chaos that I understood the true nature of human resilience. They did not rely solely on force, they relied on creativity, patience, audacity, and intelligence. Every obstacle became an opportunity, every defensive system a tool, every limitation a weapon. They had redefined the meaning of combat and control in ways we had never imagined possible. Even as the final alarms screamed across the ship, the humans maintained coordination, patience, and timing. One moved through the bridge's shadowed corners, while another neutralized reinforcements with improvised tools. Turrets that should have dominated entire sections misfired at critical moments, and drones intended to isolate humans became ensnared by improvised traps. Every move was deliberate, every maneuver calculated to expose our assumptions and exploit our overconfidence. And then the human paused for a moment at the center of the bridge. He surveyed the chaos, eyes flicking from one incapacitated officer to another, calculating, observing, and finally smiling with a quiet, almost imperceptible satisfaction. It was not the smile of triumph born from brute force, but the smile of a species demonstrating its mastery, a mastery not of weapons, but of mind, of strategy, of improvisation and foresight. In that instant, the humans had turned the entire encounter into a demonstration of what we could not quantify: adaptability, ingenuity, and the ability to dominate through intellect as much as through strength. What we had considered fragile, expendable, or inconsequential had become an unstoppable force. They moved through the vessel, bending every element to their will,
orchestrating events with subtle cues that no alien observer could hope to detect in time. And as the bridge's lights flickered under cascading failures, I realized the final truth. Humans dominate not through physical superiority, nor through overwhelming numbers, nor through technology alone. They dominate through thought, creativity, audacity, and will. Their minds are weapons, their courage unquantifiable, and their resolve inexorable. We had assumed we understood control, that our systems, our training, and our numbers guaranteed victory. We had been wrong. The humans advanced, inexorably, systematically, flawlessly. Our forces had collapsed into disarray. Systems designed to maintain dominance had failed.
And the human who had been our hostage, moving with the precision of a general and the instinct of a predator, had turned the final confrontation into a showcase of unparalleled strategy and resilience. From my vantage point, I watched the culmination of what we had long underestimated. Humans were not merely surviving, they were asserting dominance. They had turned every obstacle into opportunity, every defensive system into a liability for us, every expectation into a weapon against our assumptions. And in their movements, their coordination, and their audacity, I understood why humans command their environment with unmatched efficacy. The final alarms blared, the ship quaked under cascading failures, and the humans moved as one unstoppable entity. From the bridge, I could only watch in awe, fear, and disbelief. They had done what no species we had conquered had ever done. They had transformed captivity into mastery, chaos into strategy, and vulnerability into a demonstration of superiority beyond comprehension. And in that moment, as the humans executed their final maneuvers, I understood completely. They are unstoppable, not through strength, not through numbers, but through minds that perceive opportunity where others see danger, through courage that defies probability, and through will that cannot be restrained. The humans had won. The ship lay in disarray, corridors scarred by human ingenuity, turrets disabled or misaligned, drones immobilized, and command nodes overridden. Systems we had relied on for control now hummed with uncertainty, sporadic signals, and misrouted feedback. The humans had vanished. No bodies remained, no footprints, only subtle traces, panels tampered with, doors left ajar in precise ways, power conduits rerouted with care. It was as if they had never existed, yet their influence was everywhere. Every corner of the vessel bore their signature, a calculated chaos, an orchestrated dismantling of authority. From my observation perch, I saw the remnants of what we had thought a secure conquest. Entire sections of the ship, previously under our absolute control, had become a testament to human ingenuity. Our forces, disciplined and trained across countless worlds, were scattered, bewildered, and humiliated. Officers moved through corridors with uncertainty, scanning for threats that had already departed, reassessing plans that had been meticulously undone. And yet, no human remained in sight, no confrontation necessary, no strike force required. They had accomplished what we could not resist, with precision, intelligence, and foresight. The realization settled across me like a weight. We, the invaders, had underestimated a species capable of converting vulnerability into strategy, fear into opportunity, and chaos into triumph. Every lock we believed secure, every sensor we assumed infallible, every formation we deployed, each had been anticipated, repurposed, or rendered irrelevant. It was not merely survival. It was dominance executed through intellect, foresight, and will. Their resilience is not passive, it is active, deliberate, and frighteningly intelligent. As I moved through the bridge, scanning for signs of remaining threats, I reflected on the events we had witnessed. Humans are not predictable, not constrained by fear, not limited by expectation. They do not obey probability, they redefine it. Each decision, each action, each improvisation had been designed to exploit weaknesses we did not even know we had. They turned every obstacle into advantage, every limitation into a tool, every expectation into a liability for their would-be conquerors. We had assumed control would be straightforward. We had assumed that containment equaled dominance. We had been wrong, entirely wrong. I saw the subtle remnants of their brilliance, panels subtly tampered with to mislead our repair teams,
doorways strategically blocked to funnel us into corridors we could not navigate efficiently, sensor arrays that gave false positives, creating phantom threats. The humans had left no chaos without purpose, no disruption without precision. Each trace was a testament to planning and improvisation so intertwined that it could not have been predicted by even our most sophisticated simulations. Even now, long after the alarms had died and the ship's systems began to flicker back to nominal operation, the impression of their presence lingered. It was in the silence between commands, in the hesitation of our officers, in the misalignment of systems we had trusted. Every element of this vessel bore the mark of their passage. And as we assessed the aftermath, I understood why humans inspire awe. They defy comprehension, not merely through feats of strength or speed, but through a profound mastery of adaptation, strategy, and will. The humans had demonstrated a principle few of our species ever understand. True resilience is not reactive, it is anticipatory. It is not brute force, but foresight and improvisation combined. Their victory was complete without a single battle fought in the conventional sense. They had moved through constraints like water through cracks, leaving only the evidence of their triumph and the humiliation of our underestimation. And I, observer and chronicler of this failure, could not help but feel reverence mingled with fear. As the ship's remaining forces began the laborious process of regaining control, I walked the corridors, noting the traces they left behind. It was more than physical manipulation. It was the imprint of thought, intelligence applied to every opportunity. The humans had used our technology against us, our assumptions against us, our planning against us. In every hallway, every junction, every control panel, they had rewritten the rules, turning our superiority into a liability. In the silence that followed, I pondered the implications of what we had witnessed.
Humans are not merely another species. They are an evolutionary anomaly, a force that commands caution, respect, and re-evaluation. Their resilience is neither instinct nor mere courage. It is conscious, deliberate, intelligent, and audacious. No conqueror, no matter how powerful or well-prepared, could assume dominance over them. They had proven that control is an illusion when faced with minds capable of redefining the battlefield itself. We departed the system humbled, leaving the human-engineered labyrinth intact, carrying with us the revelation of what had occurred. The encounter had redefined everything we knew about adaptability, ingenuity, and the unpredictability of life. Humans are not merely survivors, they are architects of circumstance, turning every challenge into a demonstration of creativity and willpower. Every attempt to dominate them had been anticipated and neutralized. Every perceived advantage had been transformed into a disadvantage for us. Even now, as the ship jumped to FTL coordinates far from the human-occupied system, the echo of their presence remained in our minds. We had glimpsed a species that thrives where others falter, that converts adversity into opportunity, that transforms the constraints of the environment into instruments of dominance. Their minds are weapons as lethal as any arsenal. Their creativity is boundless, their courage unquantifiable, their will inexorable. And in the quiet reflection of our retreat, I realized that this encounter would redefine our interactions with every world we sought to conquer. We could no longer assume compliance, predictability, or vulnerability. Humanity had revealed itself as a species whose brilliance is untamable, whose ingenuity is unmatched, whose resilience is active, deliberate, and terrifyingly effective. From my observation perch, I looked at the empty corridors, the inert systems, the scattered forces, and understood the lesson we had been taught in the most inescapable terms. Humans are not merely another species, they are a force of nature. They defy comprehension because they convert adversity into mastery, chaos into order, weakness into power. Every trace they leave is a demonstration of strategy and foresight, a message to those who would underestimate them. Dominance over humans is an illusion, and control is a fallacy. As we departed the system, our ranks diminished, our confidence shaken. I knew that this encounter would be remembered and recounted across every fleet and world. It would be a cautionary tale for those who sought to conquer, a testament to the raw, untamable brilliance of life as embodied in humanity. And in that knowledge, I felt something unexpected. Awe. Not fear alone, but reverence for a species whose capacity to dominate, adapt, and endure transcends every measure we had ever applied.
The humans had vanished, leaving no celebration, no evidence of triumph, other than the undeniable imprint of their genius.
And as we exited the system, I knew that every plan, every protocol, every projection of superiority would be forever changed. In the humans, we had witnessed something beyond comprehension, a species whose mind is a battlefield, whose creativity is a weapon, and whose will cannot be constrained. And finally, as the stars stretched into streaks of light on our FTL trajectory, I understood that in humans lies a brilliance so raw, so untamable, so utterly commanding that no conqueror could ever fully contain it. We had been humbled, enlightened, and irrevocably altered by what we had witnessed. Humanity had not merely survived, they had transcended, demonstrating that intelligence, ingenuity, and indomitable will are forces that no technology, no fleet, no empire can overcome. The encounter ended, the humans gone, but their influence, their lessons, and their brilliance remained. And for the first time in our history of conquest, we left a world not with triumph, but with reverence. For in humans, we had glimpsed life at its most cunning, most resilient, and most awe-inspiring, a force no invader could ever hope to master.